Today we're going to look at some of the tools that we commonly use every day, and I think there's going to be a couple of surprises. We're also going to make a scribe. It's going to be a good one. Come on inside. Welcome back to Sheet Metal is Fun. On some of the prior episodes, you've seen me use this, what we call a Christmas Tree Scribe, or what I call a Christmas Tree Scribe. It's something a friend of mine made over 40 years ago, and I traced it out, so I can't take credit for the design. But there's a lot, I think there are a lot more dimensions on here than what most of you are going to need. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a simpler version, but just in case you have your heart set on this one, I've written the dimensions on there. Can you see that all right? All the dimensions, these are the most common: quarter, half, 3/4, 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/2. Then over here I have the odd stuff: 3/8, 5/8, 7/8, 1 3/4, and also at the bottom 2-inch. Yeah, there were no notes on my side. So what I've done is I took a piece of green metal, and this also is a good opportunity to let you know that metal comes, you can get it pre-coated, pre-painted, and in a rainbow of colors: black, white, beige, green. This is green. I chose green so that you can see the scribe lines. So this is, for clarity, I made it double scale. So you would start off, to make this scribe, you would start with a piece, your cut size would be 6 inches square. That's what this one is. So for clarity, I've laid it out on here. Here's our 1.5 inches, here's our 1.25 inches, 1 inch, 3/4. Again, this is double size. So where I'm showing 1 inch, that's actually 2. 3/4. These are the most common sizes we're going to use. Every once in a while we use some of these others, and I put them in there as well. So I'm hoping you can see that enough, and we will take a still photo of this and we'll put it at the end of the video if you guys really have your heart set on making one just like this. So this is a very useful tool. I use it every day, almost every project. I'm going to set that over there out of the way. Come on back in. I want to show you. This is the store-bought adjustable scribe. This has a ruler embossed in this shaft, and we would set that to the size we want, and then we would make our scribe. So you would only need this. This is single. This is a double. This is good when you're trying to mark two things on the edge. There's a half and 1.5 inches. But you're not going to need these unless you intend on being a highly paid professional like me. That's a joke. But no, I am highly paid, highly skilled professional. That part's not a joke. So these are the store-bought adjustable scribes, and these are both Stanley brand. You can find those on the internet probably, and I've had both of these tools are more than 30 years old, so it only hurts whenever you buy them the first time. Then every time you pick it up you go, man, that purchase price hurts a little bit less. So along with our stationary scribe and our adjustable scribe, one of the things that we use is a scribe. Again, I purchased these at a metal tool supply house. This one has a thicker shaft, and it has a more abbreviated point on it. This is long and skinny and comes down to a more pointier end. So These are what you get whenever you go to the metal supply house and you buy them. But one of the things that I've learned over the years, every time you buy a pack of screwdrivers, let's say it's a 12 pack, all of those 12 are not going to be the screwdrivers you use all the time. So you almost always end up with, I know in my drawer, I probably have 5 of this size, and I have several screwdrivers of this size. So what I've done is, rather than try to find these custom purpose-built tools, I take one of my screwdrivers that I have too many of and I sharpen it to a point. I'm hoping you can see the point. Let's see, is that probably, I don't know if that helps or not, but this is the one I've made from a Phillips screwdriver. This is the professionally purchased one. This is a prick punch. So this one's a scribe. This is for scratching lines in metal. We're going to use that tonight. This one is the punch that we would use if we were going to strike the project. Ordinarily, we use this for locating a hole that we're going to drill, or sometimes the bend is up. If it's up, we'll use the scribe line, and if it's down, we'll use the prick punch, because what that does is that transfers that mark to the other side, and that's how we can mark the whole project all on one side. The ups will be scribed and the downs will be prick punched. What I've done here is, instead of making this very complex, very complicated scribe, we're going to make a very simple one. So come on in good and close. We're going to start with a piece of metal, 4x3, and you can make that of any metal that you have. The thicker the metal, the more durable it's going to be, the longer it's going to last, and it'll hold the point longer. So what we're going to do, these are the most common dimensions: 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1. So this one I made as a visual aid so you can see what we're going to do. Now that we've seen what we're going to do, let's go ahead and do what we're going to do. So what I do, every one of these dimensions, we're going to add 1/4 inch. So for 1/4, once we add 1/4, that's going to be 1/2. If my hands get in the way here momentarily, it's going to be all right. They will move eventually. So we're going to make 1/2 and add 1/4. That's going to be 3/4. We're going to do 3/4 plus 1/4. That's going to be 1. 1 plus 1/4. Man, that's the easiest one. 1 1/4. The reason we added 1/4 is because we want the scribe line to be in from the edge. Here's the way a scribe works. Let's say we're going to use the 1/2 inch to mark this metal. Well, we said 1/2, might as well use 1/2. We're going to ride, this is going to be our shoulder, and then this is going to be our marking end. So we just marked a line 1/2 inch in from the end. So we don't want to, we're not trying to hold it like this. We want to hold it perpendicular to the metal, to the work. So there's 1/2. There's 1/4. There's 3/4. Big crescendo. What's coming up next? 1 inch. So with this, we can make parallel marks in our metal, and these are the most common ones: 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1. So now that we've marked this, let's go ahead and turn this into a scribe. remember every number that we're aiming for. Let's go ahead and write those numbers in there. Quarter, half, 3/4, and 1. I didn't mark the inch designation because all of us know what we're dealing with. Nobody thinks that that's a half a foot. So every time that we can save a little time, a little ink, a little work, let's do it. So I'm going to come to that mark that we put on here, this mark that's 1.25 inches, and I'm going to cut straight in, perpendicular to this edge. Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to start at about 1/4. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start at the corner of the metal. And then what we're going to do, since we came in 1.25 inches, we're going to come in here 1/4 inch from the end. Now that gives us a point that's higher. Can you see that? See how our scribing mark is above the surface? Let me see. Is that? Kind of hard to tell, huh? Here we go. All right. So the important thing is that this point is above this point. That gives us a better chance when we're coming along here to mark, when we have a little bit of room off the bottom. So we're going to go through here. We're going to cut perpendicular. We're going to start at the corner of the metal, cut back to that notch. Same thing here, perpendicular. This is 1/2, so this cut is at 3/4. Then we're going to start at the corner of the metal, cut back to that notch. One more time. Now we're going to start at the corner. So now all of these are too long. So let's go back and take that 1/4 inch off. Now right now we're just eyeballing this. We're going to come back and we're going to fine tune the scribe. We're going to mark some metal and we're going to make some adjustments. Yeah, this is looking great. I'm going to tap these. Anytime you go all the way to the end of the snips, you're going to get a little offset because whenever you close the snips all the way to the end, they overlap. And there we're closed, the rest is overlap. That overlap is going to give us a small offset in our piece. So we're just going to tap that overlap, that offset out of there. Now our piece is nice and flat again. So let's get a piece of metal and let's try it. Here we go. Let's try our 1/4. Can you see that line? There's a 1/4. There's a 1/2. There's 3/4. And there's 1. So you already know we chose these because these are the most common dimensions, but maybe for your project these could be entirely different. But now that you know how to make a scribe, you can dial in the numbers that work best for your project. So we just put 1/4, 1/2. I want to keep moving that around because I want you to see these 4 parallel lines. Let me see. Ooh, there it is right there, right? Now, let's take our ruler and double check and see if we need to fine tune anything. Our 1 inch is good. Our 3/4 inch is good. Our 1/2 inch is a little bit long. Our 1/4 inch is right on. So our half is a little bit long. The distance from here to the point is a little bit long. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start right here and we're gonna take some off. Now let's flip this over. The other's all checked out. We're just checking out our 1/2 inch now. There we go. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to wiggle around and get myself out of the way, but there we go. 1/2 inch in from the edge. So now we began with a piece of material. Like I said earlier, the thicker you can make this out of, the more longevity and the more abrasion resistance it's going to have. These were a lot of trouble to cut. This is 14 gauge stainless steel. It doesn't like to be cut. It's very cantankerous. Whenever you walk up to a sheet of stainless and you have a discussion, you say, hey, I'm going to cut this. There's instantly going to be an argument between you and the sheet. The sheet's going to lose because we got power tools. So this is a scribe that you could do very quickly whenever you have a small piece of metal. 4x3, that's a good size. It gives you good purchase. You have a good area to hold. And check these dimensions every once in a while, and you might have to cut some off of here, or you may have to recut that. Let's do that. So I'm gonna go, this one's perfect. Let's go to this one. Let's say we're using this 1 inch scribe, and the tip began to wear off. And so now the distance, we're coming in at 15/16. So what we're gonna have to do is come in here, take that 16th back off of there. And now what we've done is we've restored this dimension back to what we originally wanted it to be. All right, there's our scribe. We did 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1. You guys can still copy this. Hopefully you can make sense of this drawing and you can download, or you can get a good look at it. Cut yourself a piece, take a little time, make a really nice one. You can purchase the adjustable ones, find those online. One of the things, when it comes to marking metal, one of the things I want you to do in your work area and in your shop is to just be aware of all the things that you have laying around and know what their dimension is. Look at this combination square. If I needed to make a 1 inch line, I know this is 1 inch. I already know that. Let's say I need 1.25 inches. My ruler is 1.25 inches. I could add 1.25 inch allowance to whatever my project was, 1.25 inches. The typical framing square, this is 1.5 inches and this is 2. So look how fast that would be if I needed to add a 2 inch allowance to my project. All I got to do is be aware of what I already have in my hand. So as you go through your workspace, just memorize what you already have And then we don't have to get our ruler out to measure. If we wanted a 1 inch, there's 1. 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 2. So one of the things I wanted to show you, earlier we talked about these scribes. These are store-bought scribes. I always have spare screwdrivers, so out of the small one, look how close that is to the store-bought scribe. What I do is I come over to the grinder, the bench grinder. This is not plugged in. I have it here just to give you an idea of how you need to work a grinder. Come over here on this side. So when the grinder comes on, it's going to turn this direction. So anytime if you're going to grind this screwdriver to a point, here's how you want to hold it. Always hold it this way. Now, we're not plugged in. I'm spinning this by hand. And I'm showing you this is a problem, right? We're getting into the problem zone because we're approaching the center line of the wheel. This is a 6" by 1" wide fine grinding stone. That's a pretty common grinding stone. If you buy a grinder, this is almost always going to be the one it comes with. But I just want you to be careful when you're grinding. Always grind so that the sparks go away from you. Not only are there sparks going away from you, there's less chance. So I'm going to spin this by hand. See, we're getting into trouble here. Now right here, look, I'm pointing right at the center line of the axle. Now right here, imagine if this is coming around at, I think this thing turns at 5,000 RPM. 5,000 RPM, and you jam this in right here, it might make a couple of spins before it finds a new home on your body somewhere. We want this tool to always have a home in our tool tray, not in our body. So always be aware of which direction the stone is turning, and always have the sparks going away from you. That's the indication that you're doing it right. If I'm grinding this way, the sparks are coming toward me, and that's your indication that you're holding your piece in the wrong orientation to the direction of the stone. Imagine this right here, as soon as it comes right here, it's going to flip and ruin the rest of today and maybe a part of tomorrow, depending on where it gets you. So the scribe, the one we use for scribing lines, comes to a very gradual slope to a very fine point. The punch that we're going to use to transfer a mark from one side of the sheet so that we can read it on the other side, look, it's a very fast slope down to the point. And we do that because we're going to hit this with a hammer. You're not going to hit this with a hammer. You're going to hit this with a hammer, and this, you're going to strike this, and it's going to put a dimple in the metal so we can read from either side. So that's why this is a little larger diameter, and the point is a more abbreviated angle. So these are two that you can make at home, and then you don't have to try to find these. You may find these somewhere, but they also could be difficult because they're kind of a professional tool. All right, so that covers our big scribe drawing, knowing what the things that we have laying around, knowing how wide they are, that's going to come in handy. Last time's project, here's something I want you to be aware of. Sometimes you may or may not be aware of the actual tools that we use to perform the job. Let's say for some reason you live somewhere and you never saw a hammer in your whole life. You move to the city and there's somebody using a hammer, and you think, oh, I've been using, my hands are just tired from using a rock my entire life. So I'm trying to draw you a silly picture so that whenever you've been using a rock your whole life, you see a hammer, this is going to open up a whole new train in your brain. you're going to look and go, wow, you know what, with that, I can do a lot more things than I used to do. So one of the things I want to do in introducing you to some of these other tools is that maybe you don't even know they exist. And here they are. So all three of these punches are Whitney brand, like Mount Whitney or Eli Whitney. And this is a number 5. And in the box we have, I think it comes with 6 sets of dies. You can see I have this one's a really small one. This is actually an 1/8 inch. This is for a pop rivet. But I just wanted you to see, look at this. Look at that. Wasn't that great? I didn't have to get a drill. I didn't have to find a source of electricity. And these punch and die sets come with the tool. That's a number 8 Whitney. This Whitney, this is an XX, 2 X's. This is an XX punch, and it punches up to a 1/2 inch hole. Look at that hole. But also, look at the throat on the XX punch. Again, this is a tool that many of you will never need, but just imagine if you didn't know it existed and you see it for the first time today. Look at the number 5. I could not punch. I could punch a hole in the side, right? But I couldn't punch a hole in the bottom. There's no throat. This area is called the throat. But look at the XX right here. This is the pan we made in our very first video. We're getting ready to knock a hole in it. Watch this. I'm right in the middle of the pan. Look at that. Is that awesome? Could you imagine drilling that hole whenever you got this awesome tool just sitting right here? We can put them in the corner. Look at that. A hole in the middle, a hole in the corner, a hole in the flange. XX Whitney punch. And this goes from about 1/8 inch up to 1/2 inch. This one comes in a little carrying case, and all the assorted dies are inside of it. This is you saw this in our last video when we compared sawing and shearing. This is the number 8 Whitney punch. This punches a 1/4 inch hole through a 1/4 inch of steel. Look at all the leverage. You can definitely see the heritage. You can definitely see the similarities between the two. This is for light stuff. This is for heavy stuff. And you can get punches and dies. I think these go up to 3/4, but as the die gets bigger, the thickness of material that you can punch goes down the same. So look at that. Maybe you never heard of a number 8 Whitney, an XX Whitney, or a number 5 Whitney. What a handy thing that is. Look at that. That's a hole. I like that. Hope you guys like it too. So we talked about these. We talked about that. Come on down here. I want to show you a couple of different power tools. So whenever you're just beginning your collection of tools, you don't want to go out and purchase something that takes up the floor space of a dune buggy. You can accomplish a lot with some electric power tools. These also come in pneumatic. If you prefer air-driven tools, these also come in pneumatic. So this tool is called a double cut, And I'm going to show you how it works, and you're going to see why it's called a double cut. This is called a Unishear. Whenever we get ready to use it, I'm going to have you come in really close. So this tool, the Unishear, Bosch makes a great one. Makita makes a great one. This is, for all intents and purposes, this is an electric pair of red snips. It cuts just like reds. All right. Here's another one of those tools that maybe you didn't know it was out there, maybe you do. This is a cone bit. It's also called a step down bit. And so what we can do, I'm going to show you in my opinion, what the double cut does best, and that's cutting round pipe of any diameter. Because if we try to cut this with snips, we have to use 2 pairs of snips. We're going to take a piece of scrap. I rolled it up into rolls. We're going to make a mark around here. All I've done is wrap this strip of sheet metal around. We're going to make a mark on here. This is some downspout that I had left over. There's the crimp, similar to the crimp that we had in our plenum. See that? The crimp just allows one piece to go inside of another piece when the two are the same diameter. All right, so this is, in my opinion, this is where the double cut really earns its way into your toolbox. I'm going to use my glasses. So we're going to use the cone bit or the step down bit. Anytime you're drilling, you always want to turn the fewest amount of RPMs and use the maximum amount of pressure that you can reasonably. We don't want to push so hard on here that we collapse under the pressure. But the way drill bits work is with every revolution of the drill bit, you need to be removing material. You got to be cutting. If I'm pushing right here with no pressure, I could do this for a pretty long time, and all I get is tired. All I get is tired, I don't get a hole. So the way that drill bits work is that every rotation, as this cutting edge comes around, it needs to cut with every rotation. If you're drilling and you don't see any shavings coming off, then you got to stop and take stock. Either your drill bit is dull, or you're not pushing hard enough, or what you're working on is hard. Stainless is very difficult to drill. But just as always, if you're drilling with any type of drill bit, always the lowest amount of RPM, if you can actually count the RPMs, if you can see it going around, the slower the bit is turning, the more likely it is that the cutting edge is engaging the work and doing what you want it to do. Where if you spin a lot of RPM, let's do that, a lot of RPM, no pressure, what you actually do is you work harden the material, you work harden, and then it just gets increasingly difficult to finish that hole. So I'm going to put my glasses on. That's your lesson on drill bits. Always push as hard as you can and go as slow as you can. So you can see here, I've marked this. In my estimation, this is where the double cut really shines. Always make sure your body's in a safe place. As much pressure as you can do. Look at that. The harder you press on this, it goes to the next hole. This goes up to a 3/4 inch hole. And these come in 3 sizes. They make them smaller than this, and they make them larger than this. Wait right there. Ta-da! Look at that. Can you see that? Look at that beauty. What a great tool that is. Look at how many steps we have on here. That's practically an entire drill bit index in one bit. That's 1 3/8 inches. That's how big of a hole you can drill. All right, now that we've drilled an entry hole, I want you to come over here really close, because I want you to see what I believe the double cut is best for, and it's for cutting round duct. Here we go. Whenever we turn it on, that's the cutting blade right there. That's the moving blade. These are the stationary blades on either side. So it's actually going to remove a portion. If we went back to one of our earlier lessons, we talked about wood cutting and we referred to the kerf. The double cuts makes a kerf as well, K-E-R-F. Here we go. Look at that. That would be difficult to do with any other tool other than the double cut. Also, before we put the double cut away, it also cuts, it makes a straight cut. It makes straight cuts very good. It doesn't handle corners very well. This is like a dragster. This is a drag racing tool. It only goes in straight lines. This is the NASCAR tool. Or F1, or Indy, or road course. So this is, I want you to see really close. This is called the double cut because it cuts in two places, which allows the kerf to roll up, which can leave these two components laying on the bench. Now the Unishear does the same thing as a pair of reds. If we started right here, the one thing the Unishear does nice is the reds cut to the left. The Unishear will actually cut left and right. And what you always have to be aware of is on the Unishear, the keep, the part you want, is going to be up here on this shoe. They call this a shoe. The keep is going to be up here on the shoe. The rim or the drop is going to come over here. Let's practice that. You ready? So this goes right and left. Here we go. Look. Look at that. That's the Unishear. Imagine how many applications you would have for that. It cuts right and left, and it gives you a really good finished edge. I think so. We know what the Unishear does. Unishear is a dragster. It makes a straight line. Unishear, NASCAR, Indy, F1, this is all your right turn, left turn stuff. One other thing I wanted to talk about is, since this episode is going to be called Chef Surprise. So I wanted you to become a little more aware of the tools and the processes that you can use to move you farther into your future of fabrication. So I want you to come in and look at something here. If you go to the store and you're looking for a self-tapping screw, they come with a point, and we don't have to be proud, we'll call that a pointy tip. And they come with a drill bit tip. I want you to see really close. See how this one comes to a sharp point? And this one actually has a drill bit on the end. I have a larger drill self-tapping screw. Look at this. One thing I want you to see with this screw, are you in close? Is if we could measure from this cutting flute to this cutting flute, the drill bit is actually almost exactly as wide as the threads. So the downside to this is a drill is a big hole, and then as soon as you get to the threaded part, once you finish inserting the screw into your hole, if you keep your finger on the trigger of your screw gun, if you rotate it one more time after it bottoms out, then you've instantly stripped the hole. And what will happen is if there's any vibration, this screw will come out. The other thing is since we are drilling, this is a drill tip on the end. There's no mistaking that. There's a drill bit on the end of this screw. So that makes it a self-tapper. One of the things that we're doing is when it has a drill bit on the end, if we're installing these screws overhead or even in a wall, we always have to be cautious about the material that we're removing, because the shavings will come off of here and they'll try to burn you. They'll try to get in your eyes, they get in your hair, they end up all over the place. So this is for thicker material. This screw right here, you could use that through 1/8 inch. There's a little smaller, also a drill bit type of screw. This is great, 20 gauge, 18 gauge, 16 gauge, and then after that you're going to want to go to a larger screw. But still, there's a drill bit on the end, and it drills a hole almost the size of the threads. This also is called a self-tapping screw, but notice it comes to a sharp point on the end. Look at that. We knew that the piece we cut off of this end would fit here because this end has been crimped. So this is a typical, this is 4 inch. So if we were doing a dryer vent, 4 inches the most common, we would tape this. We don't want to put any screws through a dryer vent, but let's say this is the vent on the top of a water heater, or it could be a downspout from a gutter. The screw we're going to want to use is we want to use the pointy tip screw. The material is so thin that if we use a drill tip screw, we're going to make a hole so big that the screw practically falls right through. So we have a large hole and we have material that comes out because we're drilling. The nice thing about these is you don't get a lot of shavings coming off because it's not drilling a hole. It's actually wedging its way in. So on this lighter material, 26, 24, 22, the lower the number, the thicker the material. We're going to go over that in a future lesson on how metal gauges are called out. So on thin material, you want to use a screw with a pointy end on it. And we're going to use the same thing we did when we were drilling a hole. You could almost count, well you could, this looks like about 7 threads on this screw. That's a 1/2 inch long screw. It has roughly 7 threads. What I like to see is whenever this screw, when it's rotating, you want to be able to count those revolutions. And as soon as the screw bottoms out, that's when you stop. If you just, once you drive it all the way in, if you still have your finger on the trigger, you're going to strip the hole out and the screw will come out. So the nice thing about this screw, the pointy tip screw, is it wedges its way in. And if you don't strip it out, they'll be in there forever. I've taken some out. Oh, they'll last 100 years. They easily will last 100 years. And I think we've done it. We've done it. We finished another episode of Sheet Metal is Fun. I am grateful that you've stopped by. I'm grateful for your time. I appreciate you guys stopping by and learning with me and changing your life, becoming more and more aware of how what you do affects the things around you. Yeah, I think that's good. Thanks for coming by. Sheet Metal is Fun. See you next time.